No, I was just wondering, in the kind of self-employment thing. I mean, for example, I'm trying to be set up as a freelancer in Berlin, and there's no tax thing which describes anything that I do. You know what I mean? And you know, as you're pushing these things, you know, I mean, how do you enter into kind of mainstream bureaucratic parlance? How are you described within that kind of stuff?
Well, to be honest, I don't generally. I get described as things that make me wince, like a social media consultant, or. But yeah, sometimes consultant is a handy catch-all that helps you. You know, people know what that is. It's somebody who explains how things work. As far as the bureaucracy is concerned, I just register as self-employed. I'm on the same. I'm on the same thing I was when I was doing gardening work for cash in hand. It's. I don't earn a huge amount of money, so it's not. I don't sort of. I don't know. I can't really justify having an accountant, so I'm never really worried about that. I just have a spreadsheet where the money I earn goes on one side, and the money I spend goes on the other side, and the balance is what I pay tax on. So yeah, I've got through this by kind of being under the radar. I do enough that's necessary, but I don't. I haven't had to put myself into a bureaucratic box, and I haven't felt the need to brand or market myself as whatever is the flavour of the day. So yes, I've dabbled in the social media thing, but I try not to define myself by that. Whatever the next thing is, whether it's content strategy or I don't know, whatever the next buzz phrase is, I will look at that, and I'll find, it's always interesting when something gets given a phrase or gets given a name, because that means it's taken on some sort of there's some momentum behind that, and it's always interesting to see what that thing actually is. But I wouldn't want to get trapped by that. One of the first things when I got paid to do blogging was, right, okay, I can't be known as a blogging consultant, because in 2 years' time the blogging bubble will burst. People won't be hiring blogging consultants. I need to be something else. And I've just figured, the best thing I can be is Pete, and so I just have to maintain that Pete brand, if you like. Just this is Pete, and this is what he does, and keep redefining that every 6 months, which is hard. But then I don't need everyone to understand that. I just need enough people to get what I do to make that sustainable, so I can get on with the important things of doing the good stuff and building that reputation.
When you've gone in, for example, you did the pop-up shop thing, the art shops, created in Birmingham shop and stuff. How did that work out in that kind of sense?
That's an interesting thing, because that's this idea of taking an internet model or an online model and trying to replicate that offline.
So how did it work? Yeah, it was like a pop-up shop thing.
Yeah, I mean, the Bullring had an empty shop unit. They were doing some publicity for something. Chris said, "Oh, have you ever thought of doing a pop-up shop?" And they went, "Oh, would you like to run a pop-up shop?" And Chris went, "Oh, okay." And he asked me to help out, and we thought it would just be a thing where I treat it as an office and we have like a little art gallery thing, and then it just became ridiculously busy and took over my life for 3 months. Scared the shit out of Chris, because suddenly he had another business that he wasn't interested in running. I didn't get paid because we were only taking 25%, so we could just about pay the staff. But we had a huge, amazing amount of interest, amazing amount of attention, and made a lot of money for the artists. So we had something, but the way we'd done it, we just sort of stumbled into doing it. I mean, that's one of these. The nice thing about doing stuff online is if you fail, you can just switch it off. But when you do stuff offline, you suddenly have infrastructure and things and furniture, and shutting it down takes months, and it doesn't work. People aren't paying, and there's electricity bills and stuff, and it's like it stops being fun unless you like that, unless you get running a business.
No, but it's a really interesting thing if you try and take that offline model, that online model offline. The experience of that. I mean, that's kind of like a fundamental.
Yeah, and this is something that I see quite a lot. Is people go, "Oh, well, it worked online, so we can do it offline." Or I've got this amazing network online. If I can take that and do something in a pub, it'd be fantastic. And you go, well, yeah, but there's quite a leap from chatting on Twitter to actually going out and committing to something like that. It's the two things. There's a lot of similarities. I mean, I wouldn't want to go into that sort of cliche of online relationships aren't as important as offline relationships. I think that's nonsense. What they are is they're different. They're very different dynamic, and very different barriers to entry, or different filters. So yes, an online activity can feed into offline activity, and things like the Flickr meets and anything. People come together, they talk about stuff, they have an idea, they do it. It's nothing particularly new. It used to be, people. Well, it happens in pubs, it happens online. But there is this. I think that you get this euphoria, especially in the last couple of years, with people going, "Wow, it's amazing! I met all these wonderful people on Twitter. I can do these amazing things. Let's do it. Let's do these great. Have all these ideas, and we're all talking about this stuff." And then you actually try and do something, and you realise, oh, it takes hours a day. It takes money. It takes time, commitment, and it takes everybody thinking along the same lines. And maybe it's not, what people say they want and what people actually want aren't necessarily the same things. And
do you think that's more of a problem than infrastructure?
I think they're probably about equal. I think I don't know. I wouldn't want to say. It's not an area I feel I can speak on.
No, I mean it's really interesting though, because it's, as you say, if you're talking about scale, what you were saying before about the books or whatever, that can scale really easily. But once you go into kind of physical space, and you got rent and electricity and you got all that kind of stuff, it kind of changes. If you get a bunch of people that are primarily used to working online and put them into a physical space, what happens? What happens to those things?
Yeah, I mean, it changes. Co-working thing was something that was interesting for a while, because it does change that dynamic. If you put people in you've got all these other ways of communicating. You've got non-verbal ways of communicating, and that produces interesting stuff. But setting up a co-working space itself is hard. Setting up, you've got these sort of disparate nomads, and you want them to stay in one place and pay rent on something. It becomes tricky. And there are lots of various ways people have come up with to get around that. The idea of using coffee shops or using office space that isn't that's being lit and heated but isn't actually being used. But I think there is an issue, and it's not insurmountable, and it's not necessarily a problem, because it's a useful learning experience, of people confusing online and offline activities and the possibilities, looking at the opportunities that are available online and going, wow, well, we should do that offline, and not thinking about why that hasn't been done offline. And you could say that a lot of things in the physical world, they've probably been tried and failed for a reason. There's especially in big cities and so on, there's not a huge amount of area for doing something new. Chances are someone's already tried that, whereas online currently you've got this new frontier thing of you can try these things because no one's ever been able to do them before. Although even that now is starting to settle down. There are less new ideas. No, I don't know if I believe that. That's not true.
Do you feel in any way that the kind of legislative things that are going on around internet, or SOPA, ACTA, PIPA, all of these attempts to regulate the internet, does that have a direct impact on you and what you do?
It doesn't currently, although I'm very aware of those things, and I would campaign against them. But on a day-to-day basis, only in the sense that you refer to something on YouTube and then a week later it's been taken down. That's kind of annoying. But a lot of that's more to do with these sort of large cloud services like YouTube and Tumblr and so on, which kind of fly in the face of the DIY publishing thing that I'm more interested in. But that's less legislative. That's more about sort of early capitalism of the web. No, I mean, the legislative thing, at some point they'll probably break the internet, but then the internet will fly around that. I mean, one of the nice things about the internet is that it has a tendency to route around bottlenecks and route around obstacles. That's why we have online piracy, is because there's bottlenecks or artificial scarcity was brought in by media companies to make profit, which is fair enough. But because it's digital, people can route around it. Legislative stuff. It doesn't worry me on a day-to-day basis. It worries me from a point of view of this is the internet and you're breaking the internet. But I think the internet would just fix itself, or maybe it won't. Maybe this is a golden age that will never be repeated because they'll fuck it up. But people will get by, and yeah, and I don't know. I wouldn't want to predict it, but I'm reasonably confident that the genie's out of the bottle, and even if the internet as we know it gets shut down or ruined or crippled in some way, some new technology will come about to enable people to communicate and share stuff, because that's the sort of inherent need that people have. On the other hand, it could be that we just have to wait 5 years for the entertainment companies to just accept their irrelevance, and then we could just get on with stuff. But I can't see that happening. So I'm quite sort of philosophical about it. And in the short term, yes, they're very annoying, and it's just irritating that this stuff happens. And it does sort of put this sort of chilling effect on people. But in the long term, I don't think it's a huge issue. It's more about, if anything, it'll help things to evolve. It'll get us out of complacency about the internet. But I think there's a lot of internet people who are sort of long-term internet people who have this idea that what happened in the 80s and the early 90s is the way it should be. They keep referring back to Usenet as the golden age and these things. And yes, those were exciting times, and that's where it all came from. But that was affecting a very small number of people. And now we've got nearly everybody online.